No, I'm okay. I just want to be able to sing. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. If they need, no problems. I'll do that. Prabhu, do you really need to do the recording? Because I'll be on the move, They are recording it also. We can always have access to it. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I was told to give a buffer between 9:45 and 10 because devotees, it'll be difficult to extract devotees from the Prasadam hall. So what I'm going to do is, why don't we start chanting Krishna's names for a few minutes, and then after that maybe I can share the slides and we can have a good session together. So let's just chant for a while. I don't have kartals, but we'll just clap. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastyatya Desatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Jai Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yajna ki, Jai Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan ji ki, Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda ji ki, Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ji ki, Jai Shri Krishna Balaram ji ki, Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Gurudeva ki, Ananta Kodi Vaishnavinda ki, Tathai Gaura Premanande. So I offer my respectful obeisances to all the devotees today. Very happy to meet you, very happy to see all of you. Like I said, 10 o'clock is a good time to start. I hope you all had some prasadam. I did not. Generally, I find that it's easier for me not to have any prasadam before I speak, because prasadam has that, heady effect on you. I'm just wondering whether my position where I'm seated is all right for all of you. Sometimes I would stand, sometimes I would sit. But I think for now, if you find it difficult to see me, please, there are spaces here. The problem is we have these pillars, and sometimes the pillars can be a little bit difficult. I could stand and walk around if you want, but then I'll have to keep peeping at you from here and there. So I'll try sitting first for a while, and if I get tired, then I'll just stand up. Okay. I just wanted to have a rough idea about who I'm speaking with, actually. So I was told at the start that this topic was actually for the leadership, right? That's what I was told. And then later I came to understand that actually, in one sense, this topic is for everyone. Because think about it, we are all leaders in our own rights, and we are all trying to balance. And when I was given this topic, I really thank the organizers, because this is a struggle for me also. So sharing it with you, will be very helpful. Maybe I should give you a little bit of a background to myself, which may be helpful for you. So my name is Devakinandan Das. I'm actually born and brought up in Singapore. But my father has rights and claims in Malaysia because he was born in Segamat. So half my father's population is here, somewhere here in Malaysia. My service in ISKCON at this moment is I'm a member of the GBC. And as a GBC, I have two roles. As a GBC, of course, I have to oversee activities in Singapore, which is where I am. But my main role in the GBC is as GBC's Global General Counsel. Which means I actually handle all legal matters. Oh, thank you, Prabhu. No. Thank you. I handle all legal matters which affect ISKCON globally and which affect the GBC. Which means every time we are sued somewhere in the world, it becomes my problem, right? And every time somebody in ISKCON is not happy with somebody else in ISKCON, which happens quite a while and quite a bit, then it also becomes my problem. And one day, if I had time, I could share with you some of the amazing things that happens to our society around the world, because we are living in an atmosphere of Kali Yuga, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for devotees to resolve problems without going to court. And so why am I given this duty is because by profession, I am a lawyer, And I'm running my own practice in Singapore for the last 26 years, right? My practice is international, which means I handle cases not just in Singapore, but I do a lot of work in UAE, I do a lot of work in EU, I also do work around this region. Most of my work is actually in the corporate field, but I'm also a litigator, which means I spend a lot of time in court fighting cases, right? So you can imagine how happy I am to meet devotees, because it's very difficult. It's a very different atmosphere when you're doing that. The other thing that I also do in my work area is that I'm a mediator as well as an arbitrator, right? And that's what I tend to do more often, because I think that's what is needed. So that's my work life in that sense. But in terms of service, this is my main work. And of course in Singapore, currently I'm also the zonal supervisor in Singapore, and I head a few other committees at the GBC level. So I'm very happy to be here with you, because it's been a while since the convention was there, and for us from Singapore, we've always looked up to the Malaysian devotees, because the Malaysian Yatra has grown exponentially, you know, and it's always a joy to meet devotees who are so dedicated to the movement. And Malaysia is so big, and so devotees come in all shapes and sizes, and it's very nice to meet everyone. The topic today is actually about trying to balance what we call work, family, and spiritual life. I gave you my background so that at least you can understand the challenge I have in balancing my work, my family. I have a wife and I have 2 children. The daughter is 18 and my son is 20. And so therefore, you know, they are very much at an age where if you say yes, they must say no. And if you say no, they must say yes, right? So that's how they are. I also have both sets of my parents and my in-laws and to take care of. So that's the family aspect. And then there's of course the spiritual life, which is what we are trying to do, right? I got introduced to Krishna consciousness by the mercy of Prabhupada's books. Srimad Bhagavatam when I was 13 in 1982, 1983. And since then, by Krishna's mercy, you know, the wonder of Srila Prabhupada's teachings and his movement has kept me alive. So the question today for the leaders and for all of you, right, because you're all leaders, is actually the question of how to balance. And so I thought it'd be nice to have some slides here, and I will share the slides with the organizers, so that at the end of the day, if you feel this is important and useful for you, you could take it to wherever else you go, and you could also speak on it. And that this is a topic that I find in ISKCON is something that we're grappling with. And the reason for it is very simple. The challenges that we face, and when I use the word leaders, I use it in a very broad way, because like I said, frankly speaking, at the end of the day, we are all leading. We are leading in our field of activities, and therefore this applies to everyone. The fact of the matter is, leaders carry a lot of what we call spiritual responsibility. And on top of your family, on top of your house and your work, you have undertaken a huge field of task, which fortunately or unfortunately does not pay you, doesn't give you any kind of rewards in the material sense, but an entire community of devotees actually look up to you. Now, you don't have to be what we call a very big leader for devotees to look up to you. You could be a devotee working sincerely for Krishna, and you become a leader because people become inspired by you and they look up to you, and that becomes very important. The problem is, with significant spiritual responsibility, it always comes with what we call heavy investment in time. And therefore, time becomes the most challenging thing for us to actually balance. Many leaders have families. Can I have a quick show of hands? How many of you are actually in the Grahastha ashram? There you go. It's amazing. All right. Yeah. So you can see that the face of ISKCON has changed. Previously, right, the majority of ISKCON devotees were in the temples. That's how it was. And then now, if you look at it very carefully, we find that 90% of devotees who are supporting ISKCON temples are actually outside of it. And we are either gainfully employed or we are running something and we are moving on with our lives, but at the same time, we are also serving the community. So especially when we have families, then we also have to think about maintaining them financially. We also have to think about how to take care of them, and we have our responsibilities. So the balance becomes a very challenging thing. Sometimes people say, I've been in seminars where devotees say, look, I'm a brahmachari, or I'm not doing, I don't have these responsibilities. But our experience is that even if you are in any status of life, you are often challenged because you have to balance your personal sadhana, you have to balance the services in the temple, and you have to balance your own mental and emotional space. That is something sometimes that we don't speak about. Sometimes as leaders or as devotees, we are giving so much that we don't realize that we also have to nourish ourselves. If I have $5 in my pocket, I can't give you $6, isn't it? I'm short of $1. That's a deficit. So if we really want to be effective devotees, it's so important. It's so important that we ourselves are actually what we call nourished. If we are not nourished, it's going to become extremely difficult for us. I think I'm going to stand. Let me just move this away. Let me move the chair away. Okay, good. There's this added thing. Okay, so actually, even if you're going to get married or you're thinking, should I get married? In either way, even if you are and you have a family, you will realize that sometimes we are performing so much of services, but it may be at the cost of our own sadhana. And sometimes our mind is very powerful. It gives us very favorable arguments to say services come first, you can chant later, or you can read later. I used to read so much of Srila Prabhupada's books and I got nourished by it, but now I don't have time. I'm justifying it because I have more services. But the process of Krishna consciousness is still fundamental. Reading Srila Prabhupada's books, studying Srila Prabhupada's books, acting on Srila Prabhupada's books, making sure we have a rich sadhana program, and having our own time and our own space to reflect on our own spiritual life. Sometimes when we study Bhagavatam, for example, it's one thing to read it, close it, and go to work. But it's another thing to take notes, to think about it, to study it, and to think how it should be applied in our daily life. That little bit of extra time is what actually helps us in balance. And if we don't have that time, what will happen is we'll just go through the ritual of being a devotee. If we've been a devotee for a long time, we'll just continue with it. And after a while, we will not be able to balance what we need to balance. So this is our challenge today. And this is the framework for what we are speaking. And at the JBC level, we have done surveys, and we have found increasingly leadership finds this very daunting. It finds it overwhelming. And you will be surprised at the number of devotee leaders in ISKCON who suffer mental and emotional breakdowns. It actually happens, Prabhus and Matajis. It does. And we have had to sometimes remove leaders from their positions of service to give them the space to grow their own balance and then become peaceful. So this is something which is actually very real, and we are finding it very common. Now, what does balance mean? The problem sometimes is we don't realize what it actually means. Balance actually is a Latin word, and if you look at it, it actually means a scale, which means you need to be able to evenly distribute in order to be balanced. If something is too much on one end, you will find that you are not very balanced. Sometimes devotees have a very powerful point to say. They say, as long as I'm fixed in my sadhana and spending as much time as I can in the temple, Krishna will take care of my family. And I don't have to spend time with them. Krishna will take care of my work. I don't have to report to work. But the truth of the matter is that very often doesn't happen. And that's why balance is needed, right? So sometimes in the name of faith, many devotees may miss this point of being balanced. And the thing that is very important in the word balance is the cousin of the word balance, and that's the word harmony. If we are not in harmony with our surroundings, you will find that very often, instead of becoming a source of inspiration to people, we become a source of distress or disturbance to people. When I first took up Krishna consciousness, I was 13 years old. And my mother introduced me to Srimad Bhagavatam because she bought it. And I recall that once she bought it for me, she thought that he will read and he will be a good Hindu. But the problem is, I don't know whether you call it a problem, I became very attracted to Krishna consciousness. And I started chanting, I would chant and I would start not really doing my homework. And that started worrying my parents to the point where they became anti-Krishna conscious. So what would happen typically is that I would close my door and study. I would have this drawer open, but I'll be chanting. Mother opens the door, drop the bead bag into the drawer, close it, and I would be pretending to chant. Be pretending to study. But I realized after a while that actually because of the fact that I didn't give my parents this confidence that I was balancing things, they saw Krishna consciousness in a very negative light. It's only when I started doing well in my studies, then they told me, then my mother would come up to me and say, by the way, have you chanted today? Have you read, the books that we bought? And then I realized, okay, fine. Because she's seeing that I'm investing time in my student life and I'm doing well, she got the confidence that I should actually be able to balance things. And today my parents are devotees. They're very old now, they're in their late 80s. They chant, they're very favorable to the movement. But if I didn't start becoming balanced, I would have lost them. I would have. And very often we lose so many family members because of that also. And it becomes very difficult. The chance to make them Krishna consciousness is lost, and instead very often they start thinking, you Hare Krishnas. And then they have this whole idea of who we are. And it becomes very difficult. So that's why in Bhagavatam and our Sastras, you'll find that devotees have all these qualities which help them to become balanced. Parikshit Maharaj in the first canto of Bhagavatam is a very good example, right? When you read Bhagavatam that Parikshit Maharaj was not just a pure devotee of the Lord, but he was an excellent administrator. He took care of the entire kingdom very well. And if you read about him, Yudhishthir Maharaj, and you read about everybody else, right, in Bhagavatam, all the Maharajas, you'll find that they were all leaders. They were all great devotees. And you would never hear them ever neglecting their families. In fact, their entire kingdom would become Krishna conscious. Not just a group of people, but the entire kingdom. When Parikshit Maharaj knew that he was cursed and he was about to die, he actually showed composure. He showed balance. He knew what he had to do when. He was never compromising on being a great king, but he never compromised on remembering Krishna. And this is the greatness about him. So you will find that when you are balanced, and this is very practical, you can ask yourself this, you can test it on yourself. Do I have the composure necessary to be a balanced person? Am I peaceful in what I'm doing? Or am I always running from point to point because I'm always late and I can't balance it? Is my wife knocking on my head because I'm not spending enough time with her? Are my children saying that you're spending all the time in the temple and you don't have time for us? Some children, when they grow up in Krishna consciousness, when we talk to them, they say, we don't recall a time when our parents sat down and spent time with us because they were always in the temple. And after a while, we just got tired of the temple because we associated their separation from us with the temple. You see that? The association point. So these are very important qualities. If you have these qualities and you share them in your workplace, you share them as a temple devotee, you share them at home, then the chances are you are bringing balance, not just to yourself, but even to those who are around you. The big question we have is balance easy? That's the question we have. Now, the word balance itself will tell you the answer, right? If anyone tries to ride a bicycle, you'll realize you cannot switch off at any point of time. It just goes maybe into automatic mode, but the fact is you're always balancing. You're always balancing. If you were to stand on one leg now and I got all of you to do that, you'll realize that it really requires your focus. So please remember one thing. Balance doesn't mean today I'm balanced, tomorrow I will always be balanced. No. Every day is a balance. And therefore balance requires endeavor. Endeavor. And that's why for a devotee, endeavor is very important. There's a very nice shloka in Bhagavatam, 285, I think, of Srimad Bhagavatam, or 284. Shranavataha shraddaya nityam granatascha swa chestitam kalena na ati dirgena bhagavan vishate hriddhi. Shukadeva Goswami says very nicely that if you want to actually see Krishna, then you must do Shranavataha shraddaya nityam. You have to hear about Krishna, and you have to hear very eagerly about Krishna. But the second line of that verse is very important. This attempt to hear about Krishna, any attempt at performing Krishna consciousness, has to be granatascha swachestitam. That means it must be performed with your own endeavor. It is the same with balance, Prabhus and Matajis. It is the same point, same Bhagavatam principle. Until we put endeavor into balance, balance is not going to come and find us. We will have to find balance. That's very important. You can't expect your family to fall into place. You can't expect your service to fall into place. And you can't expect that your work will just drop very nicely. You will have to endeavor. Once you accept that it is a constant, but it is a constant variable, which means every day you will have to balance. For those of you who have family, you know, you wake up always to a different family situation every day, isn't it? Right? Especially if you have teenage children, every day is a different situation. If you have husbands and wives, you will also find different situations. It will. By the way, I do a lot of family law, so I see a lot of this happening. Now, balance also requires focus and energy, which means you need to put energy, not just in the three fields we are talking about, but in balancing them. That's where the energy needs to be. If you don't put the energy and you're not aware that I have to balance things out, then it's very difficult to even conceptualize what balance is, which is why balance requires vision. You need to sit down and think about, how am I going to approach the next 2-3 years of my life? How much time do I need to put for my work? How much time do I need to put for my family? How does that time happen? You can't just plan it and not execute it. That is vision. And finally, you need a goal. What is our goal? Our goal as devotees is Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yathor Bhaktir Adoksaje Ahaituki Apratihata Yayatma Suprasidati. This is our goal in Srimad Bhagavatam, which means that we have so many dharmas. Our family is our dharma, our work is our dharma, and our spiritual life is Paro Dharma. Yes, our spiritual life is essential, and it is the highest dharma, but it must be done in such a way that in all that we do, we have to always remember the two principles, ahaituki and apratihata. If you approach your family in such a way that your service to them is as unconditional as possible, then you will not be dragged into the idea of expectations. You will serve them. If you work as a lawyer, as a doctor, or anything else that you're doing, but every day you walk in knowing that I should give it my best and offer it to Krishna and make it a serious mantra, then our experience is that it actually becomes part of your balance. So a devotee never loses sight of the goal, but we always find ways and means to find balance to achieve the goal. That is very important. Sometimes we have to pull the brake and stop the car and look around and ask yourself, where am I? Sometimes we are on such a move, we just keep moving and moving and moving. But the problem with imbalance is that we don't stop to think, okay, what is happening? We ignore. We are not sharp enough to see, is our family feeling all right? Are we doing enough for them? Am I doing well in my work so that people at work will think, okay, he's doing good work, he's delivering, Or am I also delivering in my service? These are questions we have to constantly ask ourselves. So what does it really mean to have a balanced life? These are the 5 points which are very important. At the center is always our spiritual balance. As long as we are serious in our devotional service, Krishna will always help us. This is something as leaders and as devotees we know that. Ananyas chintayantu mam ye janaha paryupasate. We know that, right? Tesham nitya abhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahami aham. Krishna is very clear that if we are exclusively devoted to Him, then He will give us what we lack and He will always preserve what we have. So we don't have to worry if we take up Krishna consciousness seriously, that at the very center of our balance is our spiritual balance. But the word exclusive devotion means we are devoted to Krishna and we put Krishna in the center. But that doesn't mean we throw away everything else which is not in the center. That's what normally happens when we try to be serious in Krishna consciousness. I'm not sure how you are, but when I was growing up in Krishna consciousness, many people would get put off with the Hare Krishnas because they would tell that you all are too fanatical. You can't come for a function, you can't come for a family function. If you come, you will tell us. I remember devotees meeting me and telling me, your parents are actually Maya. You know, they're Maya. Prabhu, you will understand in time, they're actually Maya, so don't spend too much time with them. That's what they would tell me. When I had my first child, I remember a very elderly devotee came and said, the important thing is you must remember, all this is the arrangement of Maya. And if you get too attached to your child, you'll also be in Maya. So this has also happened. You hear this often happening. So therefore, spiritual balance means that we should be balanced in all these faculties. We need to be mentally balanced. We need to have physical balance. That means we need to take care of our health. You know the kind of prasadam we have, right? And you know how wonderful prasadam is, isn't it? Do you know how many devotees in temples have challenges of health? Not because they are not eating prasadam, but because they are having too much prasadam. And they have no exercise. Prabhu, I just walk 5 minutes, I'm okay, I'm quite healthy. Nothing's going to go with 5 minutes. You need your time for exercise. You need your time to balance yourself. Look at Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada walked more than anybody we know. And he kept walking and walking. And if you ask Prabhupada's disciples who walked with him, they will tell you it was difficult for them to keep up with Srila Prabhupada. It was difficult, right? So physical balance is very important. Then there must be a social equilibrium. And there must be an emotional balance. Sometimes we have seen devotees being distressed by something that happens in the temple. And they come up to us or they come up to a devotee. And the devotee tells them, don't worry about this. Whatever that happened, right, is for your good. Just drop it. You don't have to think about it. It's Krishna's arrangement. But what very often we miss is the devotee wants to understand or wants someone to hear what they're feeling, what they've gone through, because it's real to them. It's real to them. Remember, sastrically, and this is important, truth in this world is relative. What does that mean? It means what is real for you appears real for you. And if I have any empathy, then I should appreciate that that is something you have gone through. And I should be able to be spending time hearing about your problem. That is very important. And that's why leaders who are able to do that, family members who are devotees who are able to do that, they will nourish others in Krishna consciousness. Because they hear. Srila Prabhupada always heard his disciples. He spent so much time writing to them, hearing them through his letters. In those days it was letters. And he would write back to them. If you read Srila Prabhupada's letters, they are so full of emotional balance. Really they are. Prabhupada would encourage devotees. He would encourage them when they were discouraged. He would sometimes, like a stern father, tell them not to do something, but he would always take time to explain to them why you shouldn't do something. You see, that helps us emotionally. And that is why this balance is very important. Why? More so because we live in a world which is not balanced. If we lived in a world where everything was prioritized and everything was fine, then it's much easier. We live in a world of strained relationships. It's Kali Yuga. Even amongst devotees, if we are not careful, we say something, someone may take offense, and then there is tension between us. I may have meant something, you may have taken it differently, we never spoke about it, and we just kept it in our minds or our hearts. It happens very often. You know, we have ISKCON Resolve in our movement. You may have heard of it, right? It's the mediation arm of the movement. So before a matter comes to me as General Counsel, we try to resolve matters at the level of ISKCON Resolve. Because by the time it comes to me, it's all about a court matter or a problem. But before that, ISKCON Resolve is there to resolve problems between devotees. Every year, we are seeing significant increase in the need for ISKCON Resolve. Why? Because of strained relationships. Because of strained relationships. Another thing that happens is also because of ill health. Very often, we find that devotees are not taking care of themselves because they don't have any balance and they are rushing. It's not that they want to do it, but their body is breaking down. You have seen so many of our leaders giving so much of their life to the point where if you ask their doctors, they will say, technically speaking, they shouldn't be walking, they shouldn't be talking, but they're still going on with it. So we may not be at the level of these great devotees, but if we owe it to those who are dependent on us to be of good health. But that is a problem. And there is also what we call the rat race. Everyone's rushing. Everyone wants goals. Sometimes in ISKCON, what happens is we are pushed to the point where you have to deliver. I need you to deliver this amount of quota. We have goals. I'm also seeing a lot of leaders globally who come and speak to us and tell us that we're feeling very pressured because we left the corporate pressure. We came into ISKCON, and now Temple President has set goals and he's told us, don't come back until you achieve it. And then when we sit down together, we find we're under pressure because there are leaders who say, I managed to sell this many, or I achieved this goal, and then we start feeling very small. And we feel, what's the difference? Right? It's almost like we were in the corporate world, and now we have the same problem. And when I go home also, my wife is setting goals for me, which I cannot achieve also. And my children are expecting me to do something, and I can't achieve it. And it becomes a breaking point. So this is also a problem. And then I don't have to tell you about excessive social media, right? Social media has caused a lot of imbalance. Because very often devotees come and tell me, Prabhu, I have no time actually. But if I really sit down and talk to them about how much time they have, I realize that a lot of time is spent scrolling. There are times when they say, let me just relax for a while. Instead of relaxing with their children or relaxing with their family, the whole family is watching social media. No one is talking to each other. Have you gone past places, where you see people sitting down at restaurants, just pass by, and you see they are no longer talking to each other. They're all looking at their media, and they're just not talking. They spend a whole day, then after that they walk away. And that's what could happen to us if we are not careful. Because if we are not careful, we do the same thing. I know many temple presidents who have privately told me, Prabhu, you know how I relax? By scrolling through social media. I know I shouldn't be saying this, but that's what happens. Because I'm so stressed out. I don't know what to do. So I don't have time to talk, and I don't want to talk. And then I complain about not being balanced. So that's a very subtle way in which we are actually perpetuating imbalance. That's very difficult. And then we have political instabilities. We live in a world where nothing is balanced. Over here in Malaysia, in Singapore, we're all right. But right now, for the last few months, do you know how devotees in Ukraine are doing? Do you know how devotees, in Israel, Palestine, they are doing? It's very difficult. Very difficult. There is no balance to their life. I was in a meeting that day, and our GBC chairman had just joined us, and he apologized because he was late. And the reason why he was late was he was in Ukraine, and in the morning one of our devotees died in a drone strike. She was just walking along the road, and there was a drone strike, and she left her body. These are realities of life, and they can strike so much of imbalance in our lives. I bring this up because we never know what happens in this world. How long are we going to be imbalanced? Or how long are we going to say, you know what, never mind, I'll take the bull by the horns later. Not now, not now. It has to be now. Because the more balanced we become, the more balanced everybody else around us will become. This is our responsibility. Don't wait for the devotee next to you to become balanced. You become balanced first, and then others will become balanced. This is very important. Now, what does Bhagavad Gita say about balance? This is a very nice point. Krishna, the unique setting of the Bhagavad Gita itself is very beautiful. If you think about Bhagavad Gita, right, there is what we call, if you look at a seesaw and you see the fulcrum, you will see on one end Duryodhan and gang, and then on the other end you will see the Pandavas, illustrious devotees. And the fulcrum actually is Krishna. Krishna is right in the middle, figuratively, with Arjuna at the start of the Bhagavad Gita. And what happens to Arjuna? Arjuna at the start of the Bhagavad Gita, for the first chapter, as you all know, he advances wonderful arguments about why he shouldn't fight. Isn't it so? And as he was doing that, eventually after all that he tried to convince his head with, at the end of the day, he became morose. He became discouraged. If he had the solution of walking away from the field of the battle, then why was he morose? Why was he discouraged? Think about it. If all the arguments he presented in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita were salient, balanced arguments, why is it at the start of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he actually admits to Krishna that I'm very morose and I'm very discouraged? Why? Because he did not know at that point how to balance between two things: his duty to fight and his duty to his kinsman. This was the crux of his problem. And at the same time, he also realized that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. He may be his transcendental best friend, but he's also the Supreme Lord. And so he completely refused to fight. He wanted to abandon his duties. And at that point of time, instead of feeling balanced, he suddenly became very renounced. Have you noticed sometimes, and I'm sure you would have felt it, when we cannot balance something well, we normally go back to the idea that I'm renounced. Or, Prabhu, I'm feeling this great sense of detachment from life. That's what happens, And therefore, it's very easy for us, because we are devotees, right? We know Shastra. It's very easy for us to use words like renunciation and detachment and then say that's the reason why we continue to be imbalanced. It's very easy. Because Arjuna did it himself, right? And his example, in one way, is for us to think about. That's why the Bhagavad Gita is so important. And the problem with not being balanced is what Arjuna did. He did not know what to do when. He didn't know what to do when. Balance requires you to be able to do that. So his speculations and his concoctions were not from Shastra. They were actually products of his mind. But the one thing that served and saved Arjuna is very important. He had devotional stock. Devotional stock means he had been a sincere devotee for a long time. And this is very important. If you look at Bhagavatam, if you look at Bhagavad Gita, especially Bhagavatam, you'll find many devotees, by the arrangement of the Lord, were placed into difficulties. Am I right? Always. In fact, anyone reading Bhagavatam will be struck by the fact that, wow, there's problem from start to end. From first canto to ninth canto, every devotee had a problem, right? They all had problems. But this is very important for us, because we are always having problems anyway. Imagine in Bhagavatam, every devotee was perfect. When we read Bhagavatam, we'll become very discouraged. But when we read Bhagavatam and find every devotee had to balance, had to struggle, then it becomes helpful for us. But we notice one thing in Bhagavatam. Every devotee was ultimately saved by their sincere devotional service. That's why at the center of the 5 circles, our spiritual life is paramount. Very important. If our spiritual life is the way Srila Prabhupada has given us, and not our concocted idea of spiritual life, it will truly become the fulcrum for balance. Sometimes what happens is, as time goes by, we dilute what Prabhupada has given us. We concoct what Prabhupada has given us and we think it is like that. But we forget to go back to the basics. And Arjuna had his basics right. So he accepted that I have a problem. He accepted it. And then he directed his mind and senses to Rishikesha. And once he sent and directed his mind to the Lord, then the Lord directed his senses. And that's why this verse is so important. Karpanya dosha pahata swabhava prichami tvam dharma samuda chetaha yad shreyasya nishtitam bruhi tanme shishyam teham sadi mam tvam prapannam. And see how nicely he has said, I'm confused about my duty. That actually, the reason for the confusion is a lack of balance. And then he goes on to say, I've lost my composure because of my miserly weakness. The weakness comes when we are not balanced. And now in this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. And this is so important, to have faith in Krishna, to know whatever Krishna gives us is always the best. And so now Arjuna becomes a disciple. So having humility to accept that we have problems with balance is a first step to becoming balanced. It's very important. If we walk away from here thinking that, you know what, I'm totally balanced, don't worry, I'm fine, then it becomes difficult to identify blind spots. But if we have issues, if we look back and we think, I'm always struggling, my family is not happy with me about something, some days they are, some days they are not. Some days my temple is happy with me, some days they are not. Some days my work, I find I'm not motivated, but I have to work. How do I balance it? This mood of accepting it becomes very important. This is the start of actually becoming balanced. So Arjuna's imbalance is very important because he's showing us, he's a pure devotee, but through him we are learning that actually being mindful and aware is very important. The Bhagavad Gita also tells us one other principle that I think we can always learn, and that's the word moderated living, moderation. There are 2 shlokas, if you know, and you all would have heard these shlokas, 6:16 and 6:17. Krishna makes it very clear. There is no possibility of becoming a yogi, O Arjuna, if you eat too much, you eat too little, you sleep too much, or you don't sleep enough. So it's very clear from that and the other verse. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, I like the last word, recreation. Recreation. Sometimes devotees say recreation is Maya. That's another thing that we say. Spending time with our family is Maya. If I'm doing something and I'm not chanting, or I'm not remembering Krishna, or I'm spending time doing homework with my children, that's quite Maya. But that's not recreation. If I spend some time with my family, doing whatever activities, that's actually Maya. That happens very often. But it's not. If you read Bhagavatam, you'll find all the great emperors and devotees, they spend quality time with their devotee families. They did. And even if their families were not devotees, like many of us may be in such situations, it doesn't mean that we neglect them. So recreation is also part of Krishna consciousness. It is. If you look at your schedule for the 2 days, I think the word recreational activities are there, right? Somebody must have read Bhagavad Gita and put it there, right? It's there. It's there. If you ask Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they will tell you, yes, we had recreation. We swam, sometimes we spent time together. We did things together as a family of devotees. That's very important. Very important. So recreation is not bad. It's very much part of spiritual life. And then of course there's work. You've got to work very hard. So that is there. So you can see from these 2 verses that actually leaders sometimes, and this I've seen it very often, we suffer from what we call the leader's guilt syndrome. We feel 24/7 I must be engaged in the spiritual community. I've given my life to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, I have very little time for my health, and I have very little time for my family, my finances, my work. I had a case, I think it was somewhere in a few years ago, was in India. There was a devotee leader who was spending so much time with Krishna consciousness. He was doing so well. But the problem is his family members felt neglected. His work suffered. He didn't earn well enough. And they were living almost at poverty line. Never told this to the other leaders in the temple. Never communicated this. Until the wife had to approach them and say, can you please talk to my husband? Because this is what's happening. And eventually, because he neglected his health also, he ended up with a stroke. And because he had a stroke, right? And all the time whenever he was supposed to take medication, he would say, no, I just believe in Krishna, everything will be fine. But in the end, when he had a stroke, who looked after him? His family. The same family who he had no time for looked after him. If you think you have a stroke, you think the temple has the facility to take care of you. We don't have a hospital in centers. Who would you go back to? You go back to your family. And yet when your family is there and you're all right, you don't have time for them. You see, this becomes a source of great imbalance. And instead of giving people a favorable impression of Krishna consciousness, you end up making people feel resentful of Krishna consciousness. So sometimes the more we sacrifice, that kind of sacrifice does not necessarily translate to advancement. That's very important. So there must always be the idea that we should not become a source of disturbance to others. Very important. And that happens because we don't view family and work as part of Krishna consciousness. Very often we say that that's the material sphere of my life, this is my spiritual sphere of life. But it's not true. It's not true. Everything that is given to you can become Krishna conscious. If we understand that that is also an aspect of Krishna consciousness, then we will treat it well. We will treat family with respect, we will treat work with respect, we will be the best worker we can be. We have a saying, Vaishnavas are not shirkers, we are workers, right? We don't shirk from our responsibilities. We take them on very well. So, therefore, we must understand that 90% of Bhagavatam's personalities were not avadutas. They were not walking around with nothing. They were all very steeped in Krishna consciousness. But why were they balanced? Because they regulated their lives. And they regulated it to fulfill their many dharmas. So because of the lack of our balance, don't allow the families to suffer. And don't allow your office to suffer either. It's not their fault. We should accept that it's our lack of prioritizing that is the problem. Okay? Now, just a few more to share with you. I like this verse very much. Ragadvesha vimuktaischu. In this verse 264, Krishna says something very important. A person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom, he can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Notice the words regulative principles of freedom. The more regulated we are, Prabhu's Matajis, the more balanced we become. The more balanced and regulated we are, actually we become freer of material constraints. We become freer. I remember that my Guru Maharaj used to tell me that if you work efficiently at work, you'll find you're able to do your work in quality time much better than if you shirk it and drag it for the whole day because you don't like doing it. Do it that way. And I found that really helps me. Really, really helps me. And I remember when I was getting married, the first instruction he gave me was, remember one thing, marriage is a sprint. No, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's a marathon, right? All of you are starting to shake your heads. I can see that. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. There's no sprinting to the final end. It's not like that. And therefore, it requires dedication. It requires work. It requires commitment. But you must remember one thing. Your wife doesn't belong to you. Your husband doesn't belong to you. Your children don't belong to you. Because if they belong to you, when you die, you should be taking them with you. Or at least they should volunteer very happily to go with you. But try asking them when you're going to go, and I doubt they will say that. They will say, who's going to take care of the children? Right? Who's going to take care of your estate? All that is going to be there. So that which doesn't belong to you cannot go with you. And if it cannot go with you, therefore it doesn't belong to you. Therefore, our family are not ours. They are actually gifts of Krishna. And the moment you see it that way, right, your lenses change. Then you come to realize that if they are given to us by Krishna, then it's our duty to serve them. When you serve someone, you don't expect much from them, but you serve them with love. And because you serve them with love, because you tolerate the challenges of the world and the challenges of family, you will find that eventually, no matter how difficult family equilibrium can be, you'll be able to achieve much more than if you neglect them. It would be. And that is our experience actually. The same thing for work. If you were to approach work in the sense of what Krishna has given in Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Yukto Vishuddhatma, one who is always working, right, for me, is a soul who's dear to me. Vijitatma Jitendriyaha, right? He is able to control his senses because he understands that work is actually given to him by Krishna. So the work that you are doing will give you the ability to maintain yourself. That is very important. And therefore this verse is so important because as a devotee, sometimes we get either too attached to something or we get too averse to something. We could become very attached to all the services I'm doing in the temple, And we become averse to our services to family, services to society, and services to our work. And that aversion is not Krishna consciousness. That aversion is a lack of balance. Therefore, for a devotee, being attached or being averse is not the consideration. Being dedicated to serve is the consideration. If we have that mood, then whether we are at work, or whether we are at home, or whether we are at the temple, the mood will be, this doesn't belong to me, and therefore I should treat it well because it's coming from Krishna. This is very important, right? When Sanatana Goswami wanted to give up his body because he felt very unworthy in the presence of Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu reminded him, your body is not yours to give up. Your body is my property. And therefore, everything that's given to us is not for us to give up. That is artificial renunciation. Our principle is yukta vairagya, which means whatever that's given to us is our quota. Isha vasyam idam sarvam. It's our quota. Whether you like it or not, that's your husband. That's your wife. Right? He may not look like a star, but he is your lot. And whether you like it or not, you are stuck with him, he's stuck with you. Okay, so now it's a matter of whether you want to fight with each other or you want to balance each other out. That's how it is. Sometimes we tell Prabhu, why am I under this temple president? I want to be under another temple president. That's your lot. That temple president is on your head. Krishna has given him to you or given her to you or whatever. Deal with it. Right? In America they always say that. Deal with it. Don't run away from it. Balance it. That's what we should do. And that's why this shloka is so important. So important. Now, I want to wind down, but what I want to do, because I want to hear from everyone, right? I want to share some points here. The rest of the slides I'll keep it and you can share, and I'll give it to you. You can read through them. But let me just run through a few things. Don't forget the Pandavas. The Pandavas were householders. They were great warriors. They were administrators, but they never failed to be devotees. Arjuna's work as a warrior, believe me, was more stressful than all of us combined. Not easy at all. Don't forget Parikshit Maharaj, how he handled Kali, how he took care of the concerns of his citizens, and how all that time he remained fixed as a leader. Don't forget from Chaitanya Leela, a very simple ordinary devotee, Kolavecha Sridhar, right? Because Bhagavatam is full of these great kings, who are very, very, what we call hi-fi, and very, very qualitative. But Kolavecha Sridhar seemed to be a very simple householder, right? He ran a small one-man business, what we call sole proprietor. And what was he doing? He was selling banana fruits, roots, stalks, flowers. And who was his favorite customer? Nimai Pandit, who gave him hell, right? Who always was bargaining with him and telling him, no, this is not good enough. Give me a better price. But what was he doing? 50% of all he earned, right, he would just save for his family, never forgot his family. But the other 50% he would give it in offering to Ganga. And that was his devotional service. And everyone knew his reputation. He was not one of those businessmen who would come up and say, sir, I'm giving you at the lowest cost. But you all know, and he will tell you no profit. Have you heard that? But they always make profit anyway, right? But he wouldn't do that. And even then Mahaprabhu would test him to the end. But he was a great devotee. He struggled, but he struggled as a balance. So the point is, balance implies struggle. But if you're struggling because you want to please Krishna, then that struggle becomes sweet. That becomes sweet. You all have tasted that. You're all devotees. I can see it on you. You have all struggled for Krishna, but you have found it sweet. You know why? The test of it is, that's why you're in the convention. If you were so tired of it, you wouldn't come for the convention anyway, right? But you're here, and that's very important. Okay, Krishna is the ultimate balancer. Think about it, right? Krishna says in 8.7, and this is really nice, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu, right? Mam anusmara yudhyacha. He says, you think of me in the form of Krishna. And at the same time, a lot of people say, how to do it at the same time? Sometimes devotees say, Prabhu, I'm working, but I can't remember Krishna. But I tell them, if you're working and you're remembering Krishna, you'll be horrible at work. Because you have to, imagine me standing up and arguing in court. And I say, Govinda, Madhava, like the gopis did. I can't. I have to argue my case. But if I have the consciousness that I'm doing it as an offering to Krishna, then you are remembering Krishna. That's the point. Krishna did not tell Arjuna, just sit on the battlefield and don't fight. Just do your japa. Okay, I'll take you through, you do your japa and you'll be fine. Arjuna never did japa on the battlefield. He was fighting left, right, center. That's what they were doing. But in the free time, you can be assured he was doing his japa. You can be assured he was remembering Krishna. That's how he was. So Krishna is the ultimate balancer. Krishna had so much harmony with nature and animals. Did Krishna ignore nature and animals in Vrindavan? No. He always had time for them. That's so important. He had time for the cows. He had time for every aspect of Vrindavan. And sometimes we say we don't have time. And that's a leaf to take from Krishna. Krishna was always harmonious and balanced in his friendship. He was loving in his friendship. He was never neglectful of anyone, especially when you read Krishna book. He had so much harmony in social engagements, isn't it? In fact, so much of Krishna's time was spent in social engagements, if you look at it from that angle. Krishna had plenty of recreation. As Prabhupada said, Krishna has nothing to do, right? He's unemployed. But he has so much of time for recreation. Krishna had so much time for his family. Remember Krishna book, how Narada Muni would go from place to place in Dwarka, and he saw how Krishna was the perfect husband, the perfect father, right? The perfect son. That's what he was. And as a husband also, he was very perfect. He knew which wife to be handpicked by. Satyabhama, he was very handpicked. With Rukmini, he was a different husband. See, right? Of course, we only encourage one marriage because that's enough, but this is harmony. And look at the harmony that he had with his parents, with Mother Yashoda, with his father, Nanda Maharaj. How much love they had. Look at Krishna playing the perfect part of a student with his brother Balram. And look at him, hard work. Krishna took his work of tending to the calves very seriously. He did, right? Even though he was playing with the gopas, he always took that. That was his work. We mustn't forget that. He was promoted, of course, later, but he always took his work very seriously. He did. And Srila Prabhupada walked. Srila Prabhupada spent so much time with his disciples in all the ways he could. He balanced the work of the society, the management of the society. At the same time, he gave enrichment, he gave nourishment to everyone. He never discouraged everyone. Why? Because he was so balanced. When Srila Prabhupada was younger, did he neglect his family? Even though there were challenges in his family, he never did. If you read Lilamrita and if you have read it, you would know that Prabhupada never ignored his service as a householder. He did it to the best he could, to the point when he could. And then he went into the ashram of Vanaprastha. So there was never neglect. There was always balance, even from Srila Prabhupada's part. So therefore, we have to have this spiritual, mental, and emotional balance. And it's only going to come when we start widening our horizon of what spiritual life is. That is very important. If we don't, it's going to be very difficult. These are some things that will come when we feel balanced. We will feel that our relationships are very satisfying. We are happy with it. We are in a good space with our family, good space with our work, and a good space with the temple. We will have overall satisfaction in life. We're not hankering. Very often, a lot of problems amongst devotees, it also happens because they feel that they feel disengaged from family. They sometimes feel disengaged from work, and it leads to a hankering, which they cannot fulfill in the temple. And that leads them to become very frustrated. That happens. You have peace of mind. You have equanimity in the midst of trying situations. And you'll find that a balanced leader, and that's all of you, is a leader who can make very sound decisions. If you're balanced, you can transfer balance to others. But if you're imbalanced, you will simply tell people to just be imbalanced, because that's who you are. And of course, everything comes down to time management. I always tell devotees when they say, how do you manage time? I tell them actually that we have to steal time. You will realize, especially most of us are grihasthas, you will realize that there will never be time if you say, time, please come and sit with me. Time doesn't sit with us. You have to steal time, right? So every day, for example, if I need to learn 3 shlokas every day, or if I need to study for 15 minutes, I need to find pockets of time in between my work to learn shlokas, to study, right? This is apart from the morning program that we have. You need to squeeze time. You also need to squeeze and steal time for the family. You need to do that. Like my children love kirtan. So I'm happy to do kirtan with them. When I come back, I'm very tired, but we make sure we sit down and we just spend time doing kirtan. That's our recreation, right? My children like sports, and I play sports with them, and I find that's a good time for me to know how they are doing. Are they all right? Are they in a good space? And they are happy because they have time with me also. So that matters to them. So the next time I tell them, come with me for a program, they'll be very happy because father spent time with me in other things. So I'm happy to go with him for temple programs. So these are moments that become important because they remember this. They remember this. If your wife is telling you, come with me for some Diwali shopping, because I need to buy something, this is Maya. You see what happens to you after Diwali, right? So we have to be balanced. We have to find that space. So time management is very important. I find that you have to steal time. And that's how you make time. And don't forget one other principle. Try it in your life. Krishna is Yogeshwar. He's master of mystic. If Krishna wants to expand your time to such a way that your time may appear 24 hours on paper, but you can expand it as if you have so much time for Krishna, he can do it. He can do it. Radhanath Maharaj said something very nice. He said the busiest devotees are the devotees who have the most free time for Krishna. That's an amazing statement. The busiest devotees are the ones who have the most free time for Krishna. Why? Because they know Krishna is Yogeshwar. He can give us the time if we want to use time for him. And time for him means to fulfill all these areas of responsibility. That's very important. The last point I wanted to share with you were some tools and techniques which I thought were quite useful. I find when I work with leaders that very often we fail to prioritize and we fail to consult each other about what is priority. The other thing that we don't do is we don't simplify our lives. We tend to complicate it. We do things that really we shouldn't be doing, and that makes it very difficult. And sometimes we don't know our area of influence. Let me just unpack that and then I will stop. Okay, that's the car principle. Yeah. Now, prioritization. I find that sometimes what we do is we don't understand this point. Something may be important but not urgent. So it doesn't require immediacy, but it is important. You have to work on it. Something may not be urgent and not important, but we are attached to it and we waste time on it. Something may be very urgent and not important. So what happens is because it's not important, we discard it, but it's very urgent and we miss it. And very importantly, something is urgent and it is important. And what is that? That's balance. So we should do it now. So prioritizing is extremely important. The other thing that's important, remember I used the word consulting with each other. That's because none of us is an island. We need to actually be able to help each other by asking and helping and offering help if we find that we are finding challenges in balancing. We have to put aside our ego. You all would know each other. Some of you may be closer to each other. Take your circles and work with each other. Help each other to balance. That's very important because I can't see something, it's a blind spot. But you are my well-wisher, you can see it. And you can advise me, Prabhu, Mataji, I think you need to spend a bit more time doing this. Don't take it as an offense. Take it as a goodwill from a devotee. So consulting, spending time, and setting priorities is important. What is important for a loved one? You know, maybe your son has a graduation ceremony, and that's very important for him. And if on that day you have something else which is a conflicting point, you have to prioritize. This probably happens once in his lifetime, right? But that may happen many times. And this would be something he would remember, and he would want you to be there. Stand up and prioritize. And that would go a long way in making him or her feel happy the next time you get them to be devotionally engaged. It is very important. And the other thing about simplifying life is to be content with what we have. That's very important. I know ambition is the challenge we all face. And sometimes devotees say, does it mean I can't try a job promotion? No, of course you have to. If that's part of your scope of job, do it. But what is coming to you ultimately is your lot. Like I said, if this is the family you have, then you must serve them. If this is the work that's given to you, do the best that you can. If someone gives you a service and it's not the service you wanted, but maybe Krishna wants it, maybe Srila Prabhupada will be pleased if you do it, then do it. It is more challenging to do something which you don't like, but do it better, than to do something that you already like, because you do it better anyway. So that's also part of devotional life. And the other thing that I wanted to share, I've gone through this, yes, this one. Very often leaders don't realize that we are not in control of many things. It could be in our community. If you're running Namhata programs or you run a temple, as a leader, you tend to be influential. And eventually you want to control it to move in a certain way. But we don't realize there are many things that we don't have areas of influence. We do have areas of influence in these things. Our own habits, our health, our exercise, our speech, our time management, and of course our sadhana. You can't farm this out. This has to be done by you and only you. But there are other areas. Look at the circle outside. These are things you and I have no control of. I've just thrown in a few things there, but you get the idea. You can't control other people's opinion of you. You cannot control who the next president will be. You can't control what the war is happening in other places. You can't control people's actions. You can't control rain or shine or whatever. And you definitely can't control prices. But you can control your words, you can control your behavior, and you can control your actions. The faster you identify your area of influence, the more you'll be able to invest energy, and then you'll realize I can balance things better. 90% of the time we become imbalanced because we are looking into areas of influence that actually we cannot control. And we put so much energy into it. And then by the time we are finished with it, we just don't know how to balance the rest of the things in life. Right? So I want to stop here. And I'll share the rest of it there. I've also given very good example of Swayambhuva Manu from the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam. If you have time, go through those 3-4 verses, because how he balanced his life in a very practical way is very, very helpful for us. I find that we don't really need to look at anything secular to learn about balance. Everything is in our sastras. Everything is given to us by Srila Prabhupada. We just have to extract it, we have to think about it, and we have to do it. Okay, that's all I want to say for now. I have half an hour before we wind up, and I wanted to hear from devotees. You all have experience, you may have questions. I'll try to answer them, but if you have something that you can share on how you have balanced things, I would be very happy to hear it. Because you know what? The good news about balancing is that it's not the monopoly of any one person. And everyone will balance things differently because we are all in different situations. Okay? Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Prabhu, you have your hand raised. Let me see. I think the room is loud enough for us to hear each other. So maybe you can come forward, Prabhu. Or maybe you can say, actually there is here. Hold on. Let me try this. Yes, I'm very well aware. Thank you, Prabhu, for joining us today.
Yeah, for the topic and that's why I came. My question is, it's about culture. See,
Yes, Prabhu.
we have so many culture of unaccountability, culture of fanatism. My question is, this is not something, even in terms of financial accountability or anything, it's not, generally leadership in our society, they think that we get a chartered accountant and it's done overnight. It's not, it doesn't happen like that. It's a leader who actually builds a culture of accountability gradually.
Absolutely.
So how is this going to, percolate into the society? Because I see a lot of disconnect from the leadership and what the present world is moving. And we had a couple of years back, I had a professor from, I'm sorry, I'm not just asking a question, I'm also giving a background.
Yeah, please, yes, please.
So he was from a professor from Toronto University, and he did a survey on the youth who are joining ISKCON. And he had different statistics to show that the young boys who are joining ISKCON, many of the youth preachers, they show, this is IIT, NIT, and all. He said that there are mostly burned out people from the neighborhood. Okay, not the real green, they are green. Okay, and they see a way out, that Krishna consciousness is a way out immediately from the stressful situation. So, Prabhu, who was there with me, he immediately called up a couple of people, leaders, and all. They said, yeah, that's true. So, and he said further that we are shooing away the young generation because our culture of fanatism, culture of insisting on several symbols, he calls it, the external symbols.
Yes.
And they said they are looking forward to understand the Bhagavad Gita because there is that wave now, especially in India.
Yes.
But they are very afraid to come to ISKCON because of this.
Yeah.
And we have this culture in ISKCON that immediately somebody comes, you get him to shave his head, get him to, So, we have preachers who are extremely fanatic. There are so many things, like today morning, Maharaj spoke about, the liberal thing about Bhagavatam, how liberal it is.
Yes.
But we have, hardcore, say that,
Yeah.
Lord Chaitanya is only when who have been arguing with Sri Vaishnavas,
Yes.
saying that, only Lord Chaitanya, unless you get Lord Chaitanya's mercy, you guys are doing.
Yes.
So, this is the background of the thing, and my question is, how is this massive cultural gap? I mean, the examples you quoted, it's all known to, we have all experienced in our life of neglect of, the people, parents are neglecting the family, and health.
Yes. Yes.
And again, it comes from a culture of, you also stay in Singapore, you say that, you go and play sports. India is a different culture.
Definitely.
Sports they will see is that totally mine.
Oh yeah.
So initially I was
In Singapore, if we are not careful, that is what will happen also, Prabhu. That is what will happen also.
Initially I was, I had to kind of toe the party line, so I was a little cautious. Now I have come to a stage of, I don't care.
Yeah.
I will go for my run, I will go for my swim,
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. Yes.
And so the question again is,
Yeah.
that
Thank you.
how do you think that this massive cultural gap, for greater culture and this existing gap is going to get
Reduced, balanced. Thank you, Prabhu. I think you speak for a lot of us, and I'm glad you raised this point now, and I'm glad you gave it context also based on the survey, because there have been many surveys about our movement, and very often the survey results are not very kind, because they do show that very often it ends up, the word that's used in many surveys about how devotees are seen by the outside world is that we are very backwater. We're very backwater, which means very often either we are in a world of escapism, where we think that this is it and we don't have to do anything else and this is how we should live our lives. And we become vacuums. We live in a vacuum and we forget that we are actually part of a community. Prabhu, if you ask me, and I'm going to put forward something that I've been thinking a lot, I think the challenge right now for balancing and for bringing this culture of balance, which actually translates, as Anantita Prabhu said, into a culture of being responsible, accountable, right? And also, in that sense, becoming transparent. Transparent about not lying that I need to take care of my health, not being afraid to say that I need to do something for my family, because we have had a culture of fanaticism for a long time. And depending on where you are in the world and depending on the kind of devotee community you have, this can also take different forms, shapes and sizes. The leadership has very often dropped the ball on this, if you ask me, Prabhu, because for a long time the leadership has not appreciated or not thought deeply enough of the direction in which this entire scenario you explained is actually going to bring our movement into. Many parts of the world, ISKCON is not even seen as being seen as integrating with society. Within even the Vaishnava pantheon, we are also being increasingly seen as being completely away and not even integrating. And integration, right, an important component of integration is balance. So the leadership has to change the culture. And it has to start with the view right at the point of the leadership and different levels of leadership. They have to understand and appreciate that we are going to be at a point of great imbalance and attract the wrong kind of imbalanced individuals if we continue this way. And it is a very sorry state of affairs, because there are so many living entities out there who can benefit tremendously if Krishna consciousness is presented in its purest and balanced form. But that's not there. So, personally, Prabhu, we have worked very hard in Singapore, for example, to change that culture. When we were all younger, there was a temple there, and many Singapore devotees are here. The temple's culture was exactly as what you described. And in fact, I remember when I was going to sit for my A-levels, I was told by the temple president that, you know what, with 6 other boys, don't go and sit for your A-levels. I will shave all your heads. I will send you for Pujari training. When you come back, you will become Pujari in the temple. And that will be perfect. That's what we were told. So then 6 of us were thinking, this is great. How will we inform our parents? He said, just tell them on their face. And that's it. Walk away from that. And we thought, oh, okay, fine. This sounds very brave and, very amazing. And that's what we thought we were going to do. And then we met one visiting sannyasi who was coming through, who was a householder before he became a sannyasi, who was working for many years and everything. And we sat down very, very excitedly and told him this is what we're going to do. And we thought Maharaj will, bless us and everything. He scolded all of us. He gave us a very good tongue lashing, and he was much elderly, And he told us, what's wrong with you? You people are in cuckoo's land. You need to work, you need to earn money, you need to study well, get a degree. What about your parents? They worked so hard to put you through it. Don't you owe some responsibility to them? You should take care of them, stand on your feet and serve Srila Prabhupada's mission. That's what you should do. And so we thought, all right, I think we should do that. And he told us one thing. He said, don't forget one other thing. For all you know, the temple may wrap up one day. It may not happen. Then you 6 pujaris will be sitting on the road. And where are you going to do then? So be accountable to your parents, right? And serve with integrity. That's very important. And true enough, Prabhu, we decided to follow that. Thank God for that. Because a few years later, the temple went Ritvik. And Srila Prabhupada saved us in that sense. He really did. We were not sitting on the streets. And because of what we were and what we earned and what we could do, today we have a temple in Singapore. We have a Gauranga center, we can go, devotees are well poised, and we always tell them, we spend time with them. And the first thing we do with any of the new devotees who come, you can ask our Singapore congregation, is we spend time with and ask them, how's your family? How are you spending time with them? How many children do you have? What do you do with them? How is your work going? Do you have a plan to get better at what you do? What are the strengths that you have that you can give to our center? And we found, Prabhu, at least in a small setting, that has helped change the culture at least through the last 10, 15, 20 years. Devotees feel that that's what we should be doing now, right? So I hope that helps. I totally agree with you, because until that changes, Prabhu, it's going to be very difficult. Anandita Prabhu, can I also ask, there may be a few others, in case are there hands that are going up? Yes, Prabhu. Can I just have the mic passed over?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol Prabhu.
First of all, thank you for the very nice presentation. Krishna, I was very happy to come and see here. Addressing this balancing of life balancing, because I'm actually one Malaysia teaching the youth for many years.
Okay.
Since I'm a student.
Yes, Prabhu.
When I was studying.
Oh, okay. That's a long time. Yeah.
It's a long journey.
Yes.
So I saw all these things that you're saying. And what Prabhu had mentioned just now,
Anandita Prabhu. Yes.
is the other extreme.
Yes.
I also see the other extreme in our society, because in Malaysia, most of us work in Nana center, with families around
Yes.
in the centers.
Yes.
And the other side that I saw is that parents, some of them, there's some who are emphasizing only Krishna.
Yes.
Another one is emphasizing too much on material education,
Yes.
where they don't have that the children even come for Sunday program saying we have to go for these.
Yes.
You ask anybody, first all of us have education,
Sure.
engineer, a doctor,
Yes.
but that becomes a very,
Sticky point.
yes, they want just thinking of that.
Yes.
Of
Yes.
course, they know Krishna will provide whatever we have
Yes.
and whatever we're supposed to bring.
Yes.
And if they didn't get that, they become disappointed.
Disappointed. Yeah.
I saw this many things.
Yes.
So now at present, actually, I'm also working in some college university.
Yes, Prabhu.
And actually prepared something like this holistic lifestyle.
Yes. Yes.
Balancing
Yeah.
spirit and matter.
Yeah.
So my point is, we have two different scenarios here.
Yes, Prabhu.
Like if you take the combination preaching aspect,
Yes.
you can see sometimes the temple devotee might encourage so much on the
Yeah.
becoming full-time devotee.
Yes. Yes. And then you have the other opposite end.
Opposite.
Yes. Yes.
So it's very good today for most of the parents and leaders that come here.
Yes.
So I think important thing now what I see from this presentation, many youth are there.
Yes.
Some of them really working, some of them still studying.
Yes.
So we need to give some kind of guide
Very much. Very true.
for that, so that they can know exactly.
Yes. They know how to balance.
Yes.
Yes.
When and how.
Yes. That is very important.
Even in the marriage also.
Yes.
Many of them thinking, okay, I'm working, I need to buy house, car.
Yes.
After this thinking, I also have to do master's PhD.
Yes.
And then, when they're really older, then they're coming saying, you have to get married.
And that's a whole different.
Because that person, I mean, many people come and ask.
Yeah, you're on the ground.
"Are you this?"
Yes,
That, you know,
yes.
then they can see that this is the, point that I think stress on.
Yeah. And I think this ties up with Anandita Prabhu's point. Prabhu, I'm coming to you. Yes. This ties up to what you are saying there too, because you see, this is where the challenge of the leadership comes in. If the leadership identifies these are issues, sometimes our balance is we move in a culture where we promote so much of openness, and we promote devotees to make sure you do your work and everything, but you could also be imbalanced in that sense. You could come to a point where devotees are not really interested to do service, and they're just interested in coming to the temple to get something, and then they're very interested to pursue other things. Which is why balance is really about always moving between both sides. And you're right, Prabhu, you need to be able to identify what is the culture in your locality. In Malaysia, you may have a certain culture. The leadership has to identify. Maybe different parts of Malaysia may have different kinds of culture. That is also necessary. We worked hard in Singapore to identify what was our challenges, and we worked on it. And then we saw results. And then we have to look at it again after 1-2 years to see whether it is working, if we have tilted the balance too much there, or maybe we will have to bring it back. So it's a constant up, down, up, down. It will never end until we die, but that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness, because we are doing it for Krishna, and we know we have a whole lifetime of service to do. So I want to thank you for sharing that, Prabhu. Thank you. Chinta Prabhu, yes, please. Can I just pass the mic to Prabhu? Oh, you two are bonus, Prabhu. I didn't expect to see both of you here. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Looks like you all have some very common experiences. When you mentioned about your A-level, I remember that same experience. I was in grade 12.
Okay.
And let me just tell you that Anand Prabhu was the first devotee I met in ISKCON.
Okay.
When I walked into
Jai.
ISKCON.
Jai.
So when we were in 12, I remember I never studied at the last minute. I just prepared advance. So last day, one day before exam, I had gone to the temple. There was a small goshala, and I was just watching the cows. So some devotees were asking, "What are you doing?" "Oh, just for the cows." So they went out to collect money, and after 2 hours or something, they came back. They still saw me standing there. "So what are you doing?" "Oh, tomorrow I have my board exam." So I just relaxing with the cows, just chanting. "Oh, tomorrow's board exam? Just skip the board exam. Just shave up, join the temple today."
How liberating.
And exactly as you mentioned, a few days later, after my exams are over, a sannyasi came and I asked him, "Maharaj, is this what I'm supposed to do?" He said, "Who told you all this nonsense?"
And he's the sannyasi.
But
And the best part is he's the sannyasi. Yeah.
To make things ridiculous, I was doubting, is he representing the correct philosophy? Because
Yes.
here we have a whole group of people
Exactly.
saying it's the right thing.
Exactly.
But I think that one thing which you stress, which I really like in your presentation, is that you stressed how we need to read Prabhupada's books daily and consistently.
Yes, Prabhu.
Because, sometimes I used to think, why did Prabhupada stress so much on his books and books?
Yes, yes.
Because, and sometimes people find it very repetitive,
Yes.
but actually it is not. In the
No.
sense, he has really ensured
Yeah.
that we get the point clearly and not miss the point.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
as you said, what happened with you later on. So luckily, I didn't shave up and join at that point. And one more thing that Anand Prabhu and I were talking yesterday, during those days in the temple, they would say, "Greatest Maya is mother." So,
Yeah, I heard that a lot too.
So, today I just want to tell you, I didn't pursue that path, and then my mother lives with me in Mayapur these days.
Yes.
And she's also come to the convention.
Very nice.
So we see that if we actually look at coming back, after that Maharaj told me that thing, then I started studying Prabhupada Lilamrita. Then I started looking at Lilamrita and Prabhupada books in
Yes,
tandem with each
yes,
other.
yes.
Then you see it is very consistent. What he's teaching, he's also living.
Very nice.
Then I think we need to create that culture
We need,
of
yeah.
where people read about
Yes.
Prabhupada
Yes.
and books by Prabhupada.
Yes.
Thank you.
And if I may add, we need to create this culture practically, at least from my experience. The leaders need to be on the ground. They need to meet these devotees who are grastas. We need to spend time with them. Ask them, how are you doing? What are the challenges you face? Every devotee whom I've spoken to or spent time with, I've always found that they have different unique settings of family, work, and the leader who is balanced can actually share that balance with the devotee. We can give them encouragement that this is how it is. Because many of them have extended families, for example, and the families may not really be Krishna conscious. And there may be some issues that can be disturbing to them. They love their mothers, they love their fathers, and then suddenly Krishna consciousness appears like a big barrier between us. It becomes difficult. Sometimes our children may want to explore something beyond Krishna consciousness, And we hit the roof because we think, oh my God, that's it, it's all over. But we don't realize that it could be just part of a growing process. So sometimes spending time with the leadership, spending time with the devotees on the ground is very important. I found that to be true, Prabhu. And when we have teams of devotees, mature, not just in terms of age, but mature, balanced devotees working the congregation, the culture will eventually change. It will. It may take time, but that's something we have to live with. But it will change.
One thing that I want to mention was what Prabhu brought up.
Yes.
I've seen that these days we're going to the other extreme also.
Yes.
That's also a major
And that's why the balance is needed. Sometimes we want the $1 million club, and that's all we're thinking. And then we forget the ahaituki apratihata aspect. You come to devotional service not to get something and leave, right? I want to take another question, but let me just tell you one thing. There was a boy who started coming to our congregation many years ago, and he would come very regularly. All of a sudden he came. So I asked him, Prabhu, very nice to see you. What's your motivation? Why are you inspired to come here? He said, I'm praying to Krishna that I'll find a girl in this congregation to get married to. And I said, okay, that's being very frank, but why? He said, Prabhu, I'm not going to marry a girl in a pub. Of course I'll marry a girl in the temple. So whichever girl that's coming in temple, definitely worthy of marriage. So I thought, all right. Then at the same time, you won't believe it, there was a girl who was coming to the temple. And she told my wife the exact thing. I'm looking for a boy, I'm praying to Jagannath. And they both met each other and they got married. And the day after they got married, we never saw them again. Because they got exactly what they wanted from the Lord, and then that was it. So sometimes it's important to sit with devotees and explain to them Shastra. Tell them that actually what keeps us balanced is when we come to Krishna, not just because we want something from Him, but because what we can do in service of Him. So that really helps. Can I take another? Sorry, Prabhu, there must be, I'm trying to get as many others. Yes, Prabhu, please. Can I just have the mic over here? Thank you. It's 11:30. Okay, who are the organizers? I should be stopping soon. We have another round. Let's end with the last question. If there are other questions coming through and you want to share it with me, I'm here till tomorrow afternoon. I'll be very happy to be of service to you. Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Good to see you, Prabhu.
Prabhu, I have a question. I have a case, double president. He has a wife and son who
Yes.
are not really Krishna.
Sure.
So the wife and children have non-Krishna consciousness. They go probably say but in this situation, can he asked me, can I bring my wife and children for a movie or vacation?
The temple president is asking you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I bring that, then the devotee will, tell me that I'm promoting Maya and all that. So in this situation, it's divided, the certified wife and child and
Yeah.
So then we draw the line.
Actually, the challenge for him is to be the temple president. Because no, the challenge is because, the real worry is that he will set an example. If he was a devotee and he had, he had children and wife who maybe were not Krishna conscious yet, then he may have to do that. It may be possible. It may be necessary. We shouldn't hide from that. It could be possible that he would have to do that if he wants to keep the marriage going. Who knows? But being temple president, that really complicates the issue, because he's in a situation where he's worried that others are going to see him in that situation. It's very difficult for him. I empathize with him. I don't know whether he's here, but I empathize with him. But he has to find his space to understand whether he can actually discharge what he can do, prioritize what he's supposed to do. As a temple president, he represents the movement. And therefore, whatever he does becomes exemplary. And therefore, if he has a congregation who can empathize with his situation, well and good. But if he can't, then it's going to cause disturbance to the society. So you see, there are two hats to this, Prabhu, right? There's the head of the service that he has taken, which is a priority, obviously. And then there's his own internal struggle, which is necessary for him to do. But because the whole spotlight is on him as a temple president, you may have rings, and waves and ripples coming out from that.
So where it was the line?
My advice to him, honestly, is that he should step out from being a temple president and handle his family affairs to the point where he's comfortable or they are all right, and settle that, and let someone else be the exemplary person to take care of it. But I speak of this as the usual disclaimer that lawyers do, not knowing the whole full facts of the situation, right? Because we don't know the background. Maybe there's a really good reason why he's there. Maybe he's an excellent temple president, but he has this issue. It's happened before, right? I had a temple president who had a beard, and that became a big issue in another part of the world. And the devotee community came up in arms and said, no, he shouldn't have a beard and this and that. I mean, that's my point is, this is a more bigger issue than just a beard. This obviously he needs his own time to find his own balance, Prabhu. That's my answer, right? If I had him, under my zone, I would say, take your time off from temple president. You work with your family, see where you can arrive at, find a balance, and obviously we'll find you service. But not just at this moment where you become a temple president. But that's just my point.
Thank you.
Okay?
The same point.
Yes, Gaurachandra Prabhu.
Sometimes the baby is not communicating with his wife and experiencing that he has a certain thing to show.
Yeah.
And maybe they can go on their own to the movies and enjoy
Yeah.
themselves, but it's not a good example for him.
Yeah. That's why it's very nuanced, We don't know. It's very difficult to
Another
say.
thing also is sometimes the wife is trying to pull the husband away from Krishna and be in their field.
Yes.
So if you go into, they try and do more and more until you don't become a devotee.
That is also true. So it's quite complicated. Thank you so much, Prabhus and Matajis. I know time is of the essence. I've taken too much of your time, but I'm really grateful to have your association. I hope that you will find this useful. I will clean it up and share it with you. I'll share it with the organizers. Prabhu, I'll share it with you. You can share it with the participants if you find it useful. Thank you so much for giving so much of inputs. And I wish we had more time, but that's how it is. I wish you all the best in your spiritual life. And I pray, that somehow Krishna will give us the intelligence and the inspiration, not just to be balanced in all these fields, but to bring about a culture of balance, because that is what we need. That's the best gift we can offer, and that's the best ambassador of Krishna consciousness. People in the world become attracted to Krishna consciousness when they see how balanced we are, when they realize that everything can be done in such a way that it is pleasing to Krishna, and even though there are so many challenges, we'll weather the challenges. Sometimes it may go south, we'll pull it back. Sometimes it may go north, we'll pull it back. But that's material life anyway. If you don't work for Krishna, then you are just going to work for material energy. Better we try this for Krishna. And never forget, Prabhupada's books are our foundation. If we just follow Srila Prabhupada and see the example he set, he was an ultimate balancer also. He was able to delegate, empower, he was able to do everything because he was so balanced. His example is ours to follow. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. We'll see you again. Hare Bol. Hare Bol.
translated in Chinese, you can also attend that. Or you can attend the youth class by Hare, that will be completely in English. This will be in English translated into Chinese, so you can join